So Jason, like every parent on earth, we are always going through phases where trying to maximize the number of vegetables that are in your children's meals when they don't necessarily want to eat a big plate of vegetables. My son, both the kids, but particularly Hudson, loves pasta of all types. Meat sauce, tomato sauce, spaghetti meatballs. Hasn't had Alfredo yet. We're holding off on that. Don't need to introduce the cream quite yet. So I developed this recipe for him just over time. It was basically a meat sauce that he uses for anything. We make lasagna with it, but we usually use it just with either rotini or spaghetti or whatever we have on hand. And it's a tomato and meat sauce, but with a lot of extra vegetables packed into it. So they're hidden, a lot of great flavor. And I'm gonna break almost every rule of every pasta sauce you've ever seen on a YouTube video or otherwise, or in a cookbook. We're not making bolognese, and we're not making tomato sauce with meat. We're making sort of meat and vegetable sauce. I've got, I really want to keep talking about this importance of using what you have, not being afraid to take something from the fridge that might look a little old. It's not rotten. Here's a good example. Here's a pepper. It's got a bruise on the end of it, but the rest of it is really, really super firm. I've got half a zucchini that I don't have a use for, so I'm going to put that in here. 2 stalks of celery, one of which has a little bit of a bruise on. No big deal. I just cut that out and I'll chop around it. So, I've got 5 mushrooms here, but if you have a full pack of mushrooms and you don't have a zucchini, no big deal. Just, there's no recipe. You use what you have, increase, decrease. If somebody absolutely has a garlic or a carrot allergy, then don't put it in. It's not a big deal. As much as people always want recipes for everything, you have to be able to sort of, maybe it's not with baking perhaps, but certainly with savory cooking like this, you can personalize it, make it your own.
I think that's why I choose cooking over baking, because I can be a little more, it's more flexible.
I love the science of baking, but you're right. If you don't follow the path and don't follow the rule, you tend to not get the right result. Whereas this is going to taste fantastic. Even if you don't have 2 of these ingredients, but you have double of something else, it's still going to be wonderful. There are a couple of techniques that are important. One of the, I really want to talk about how to fry beef properly. Ground beef is something very common. I think that when people hear the words brown your ground beef, they don't take it far enough. I'm starting with just about 2 teaspoons of olive oil. You don't need much more than that. This pan should be hot. Is it hot? Yeah, it should be warm. And in with the beef. And the first thing that you have to do is get that broken up just a little bit. You can see that it's already sticking to the bottom. That's fine. But what we're going to do is let that sit for a moment. And we're going to try to get that water out of there. The first step is to evaporate the water that is contained in the meat, working it and eventually breaking it up into fine little pieces of meat or protein. The second step is that once the water is gone, the fat in the meat will render, and it will singe the meat, and the meat will start to caramelize in that, create a beautiful fond on the bottom. Now, you'll know when it's ready because it'll smell like a beautiful barbecue burger or a steak on the grill. It will smell amazing. Up until that point, it's not going to smell all that good, quite frankly. Browning ground beef is kind of a gross process sometimes. It doesn't smell that great in the house. But we have to take it to that stage where there's all that fat to caramelize the meat. And that's very, very important. So we're going to increase that. We're going to let that water. Already, if you look at that, you can see the water just pouring out of that meat. Right. We can't brown that meat until that water's gone. Pure and simple. Whereas a lot of people might simply think that this discoloration of the beef right here, that's browning beef. It isn't. It's gray and it doesn't have any flavor yet. So we have to leave it. And that's it. So we're going to work that. We're going to let the water come out. As soon as the water's gone and the sound changes, it's boiling now. We want a snap, crackle, pop sound, high-pitched. That's the sound of fat and meat caramelizing together. And that's what we're going to look for. So we're going to work this for a few minutes, and then we're going to come back. I'm going to talk about the vegetables. Look at that. 10 minutes later, you can hear the difference. You see that beautiful foam and caramelization of the meat?
That is snap, crackle, pop, you were saying.
Yeah. And it smells like it's steak night in the house right now. It just has a really pleasant smell. So we wanted to show the vegetable side to this. I'm going to lower the heat substantially here while we talk about, the veg. And we're just going to start chopping. So we'll start with the onion, as we so often do. We're going to grate a couple of cloves of garlic into this. We're going to grate the carrot as well as the courgette or zucchini. Here's a little trick. See my knife? This is an offset serrated knife, and I absolutely love it. It's fantastic for chopping vegetables. Maybe not hard vegetables like sweet potato and parsnips and those types of things, but fantastic for tomatoes and onions, celery, mushrooms, all these sort of softer vegetables. Works really well.
It's interesting. I have the exact same knife at home, and I would never have thought to do that.
Yeah, well, it is primarily a bread knife, but the offset feature allows you to get your finger right in there, and it's safe.
Okay.
See that?
Yeah.
So you can use it more like a chef's knife. Okay. Again, we'll do this little fine chiffonade there on the ends. Okay, so there's our onion, and I'm going to actually get that onion in right away, and it'll start releasing some of its water as well, and get rid of that acidity that's in onions and bring out the sweetness. It's a very important part of the process is to fry the onions. Okay. All right, so we'll sort of start that going through. You can see it's got that really nice foam, and we'll get that foamed up there with a little bit of tomato sauce or tomato juice, really, but I'm not worried about that. That's just going to really, really help develop flavor. It's not burning at all. It's beautiful and brown, and it's going to taste like a dream. So next we'll work on our celery. I'm going to try to do this a little finer, perhaps. All of these vegetables, I'm not going to grate the celery. I could try, but it doesn't really work all that well, so I just very, very, very finely chop it. And everything else we're going to grate. I will finely chop the mushrooms, more like a duxelle. And the reason for that is that Hudson isn't really keen on seeing big pieces of mushroom, but if I do it very, very fine, it just looks like beef in the sauce and he doesn't even notice.
Right. I think that actually works for adults too. Caroline is not much of a mushroom fan, but you can get it in there.
Yeah, and the other thing is it doesn't have to taste like mushroom, but it adds a lot of wonderful umami and earthiness to dishes. But celery is very important. I'm a big fan of celery and pasta sauce, and everything, really. I just think it's a crucial aromatic vegetable in all of our cooking, right up there with onions. Whenever I see an onion going into something, most of the time, I think the celery should be the second ingredient. Even before garlic, I think garlic is, I won't say overrated, but it has a much stronger pronounced flavor. So you can go a little bit heavier on garlic sometimes.
Yeah. It was interesting about garlic. We were talking about that at home where we added quite a bit, but they were saying that there's really no other animal that eats garlic. And,
yeah.
And I'm thinking, is that a good thing or a bad thing, or is it just...
And we're the social animals, yet we eat it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our kids love it. They love garlic bread, and they love the smell of it cooking in the pan.
Yeah. So at this point, we're really just chopping. I'm kind of finicky. I always take the little bits out here. I don't really need to, especially for a pasta sauce, but old habits, as they say. Just I have to try to get rid of some of this stuff.
I'm the same. I always wash them even if I see a little seed or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're just going to finely chop the pepper and everything, and we're going to grate the zucchini and the carrot, and then we're just going to dump it all in the sauce and give it a fry before we start adding our tomatoes. Sound good? We'll come back to that.
Sounds good. Now, even the water from the celery and onions has been enough to deglaze a lot of the foam that was on the bottom there. And that's really going to help. You didn't even add any liquid. It's just the natural water release from those vegetables. And we're going to add a whole ton more vegetables now. So I just chopped everything as we talked about, finely chopped peppers, mushrooms, grated carrot, grated zucchini, and grated garlic. I'm going to go right in on top of that. And as all of those vegetables release their water, again, it'll fortify the flavor, but it'll also take up all of that goodness off the bottom of the pan. Let's season at this point as well. So a good pinch of salt. That was probably about a teaspoon and a half. It's a good pot of spaghetti. A lot of pepper. And at this point, we sort of have a decision to make about dry herbs. If you want to put some in, oregano, Italian seasoning, basil. I have a lot of fresh basil that I'm going to use at the end of this sauce, but putting a small amount of dry basil or oregano in, I don't like a lot. I find it tastes a little grassy. I prefer the fresh herbs, but it certainly is fine to put a dry herb of your choice in at this point. So the sound has changed again. It now sounds like boiling water more than it does a sizzle. And that's all that liquid coming out. And if you look down at that pan, it's almost clear of all that foam already. So all the flavor's gone in, but we haven't added any liquid. We're actually getting rid of liquid here. The water is coming out of the vegetables, fortifying the flavor, and we're not diluting this by adding some broth or water to the bottom to get that foam. We're just using the natural juice and water in the vegetables to deglaze the pot. Nice little trick. And already, a lot of those vegetables are losing their volume, and we're just gonna let that fry up for a little bit. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, we'll come back to the tomato paste and the other seasonings and the tomato sauce in about 5 minutes. So now we've got the same process here. We've got a foam developing and all of that liquid from the vegetables has come out. So really intensify the flavor. Now we're gonna add a little tomato paste. I love these tubes of tomato paste as they just take a squirt when you need them. And
I've never seen that before.
oh, it's really good. Sort of the Italian, a lot of Italian brands come in. Just gonna fry that just a little bit. I love a little bit of Worcester sauce, maybe like 2 teaspoons of Worcester sauce. And then I also put just a drizzle of beef bouillon, so maybe like half a teaspoon or so. Again, just to sort of get that beefy flavor all through this sauce. And now in with the tomato. Now, tomatoes, I am a guy who I'm not fussy about tomato in the sense that I'm always looking for a deal. So I will always walk through the pasta aisle, and whatever's on sale, I'll pick up some stuff and I'll leave it in the cupboard for just this occasion. So every time I make a pasta sauce, I'm using different tomatoes. Today, I've got some passata, or crushed tomato, Italian, as well as a little tomato basil crushed flavored tomato that I got in there. So there's not a lot of seasoning in that. There's just plain tomato, maybe a little bit of dried basil. So that's number 1. But then I will often grab, some good quality marinara sauces jarred. Here's one I'd love, white linen. It's beautiful. It just tastes like a dream on its own. But I will add a finished can, whether it be a sauce like this. Maybe it's 4 cheese, maybe it's roasted garlic and onion, whatever's on sale. And I just find it adds a little heightened level of flavor and seasoning to that. And now we will simply bring this to a simmer. I do one good stir. As I'm stirring, I'm finding all those little bits on the bottom that I missed the first time. I can feel them, and as soon as I hit one, I just give it a wiggle and get it off the bottom. And now we have a sauce that is starting to look like a beautiful, rich, fine beef, but also tons of vegetable in there.
And as that comes up to a simmer, we're gonna test the seasoning, as always, salt and pepper, but we're gonna add a really big, beautiful handful of chiffonade of fresh basil just at the end.
Okay.
But we will wait just a little bit, and then once we do that final seasoning, I'll give you a taste, okay?
Okay.
Lovely. Now this can simmer on the back stove on very, very low for an hour or two. It's just gonna get better. This has been on for about 20-25 minutes. Enough time to get it hot and bring things together. I'm gonna add a nice big handful of that chiffonade of basil. Another great thing to add here at the end would be some finely chopped spinach. I just don't have any today, so that would be another one I would sometimes put in.
We go to spinach quite a bit with smoothies, and it kind of disappears into the.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's sort of healthy for kids.
And I think we're good to taste. Clean spoon. Now, a lot of people might want to put a teaspoon of sugar in here to balance. I've done that in the past, but it's really just dependent on what the tomatoes you're using taste like. Sometimes every can that you open has a different level of sweetness. This is pretty good. I don't think you need any. We had some nice Italian passata in here, and it was made with Italian plum tomatoes, not San Marzano, but a good quality one. And I think this is sweet enough. Now it did need a little pinch of salt, just to round it out a bit, and I think we're good to go. So this sauce is great on any type of pasta noodle, but certainly I would take half of this and put it in the freezer, probably either backpack it or you just put it in a Ziploc bag, flatten it out so it can thaw really quickly. It's really fantastic making lasagna, and I was actually thinking that should be a recipe we should do down the road and sort of reference this as our base sauce. You know, just make a lasagna, not a bolognaise because that's very specific, but a meat lasagna with a bechamel and a mixture of mozzarella and Parmesan cheeses, etc. Sort of like a good go-to family robust lasagna recipe that uses a sauce just like this. So this is a great pasta sauce, lighter than just a meat sauce, but fine, coats pasta really well with a lot of hidden nutrition in it with those vegetables. So give it a try. If you've liked this video, Jason, you gotta like, subscribe, and click the notification button and help us grow this little channel into something special.
I'm sure they're going to help us.
They will. All right, see you next time.